Hello, I'm Ophelia.
And I'm Matthew.
Hello?
Oh, I
Hello, I'm
can't hear.
Ophelia. Yeah, can we start now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Ophelia.
I'm Matthew.
Welcome to Art Mood. We're doing this art channel to share the joy of looking at art, which can be historical, contemporary, paintings, sculptures, or even photography. We'll be choosing a different theme for each month, and we'd like to hear from you, so join us or leave us a message if you like what we do. And today we'll be doing the final episode of the Hogarth series. So, for those who joined us for the first time, William Hogarth is an 18th century British artist who is famous for his depiction of human folly, hypocrisy, and corruption. And to this day, his subjects are still very topical and symbolic. And Hogarth is very skillful at transforming his canvases into a theatre. So, which painting are we looking at today, Matthew?
We are looking at the Humours of an Election series.
And how many paintings are there?
There's about four, so it's doable. Yeah, but still very creative.
Mm-hmm. And so these four paintings in the subject, well, they were considered to be some of Hogarth's finest paintings, and they were bought by Sir John Soanes in 1823. So, Sir John Soanes was a British architect, and his house has been turned to a beautiful museum with an outstanding collection of ancient antiquities and British paintings. And I think Matthew has visited it, haven't you?
That's right. I believe I actually saw the paintings when I was there last time.
And it was, what paintings do you see there?
Just the Humours of an Election. I couldn't see a rake's progress whilst I was there, but
So you were able to see the Humours of an Election. So they were displayed out there.
yeah, there was a few other Hogarth paintings whilst I was there in the art room.
Okay. So these four oil paintings and later turned into engravings were inspired by the Oxfordshire election in 1754. Are you going to show us some slides?
Yes, that's right. So I found this set of images of a bust of Hogarth, the painter of this series of paintings. Actually, it was made by his friend Robbie Lyack. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's a French name, and they're they're friends. And he just said, "Hey, let me just make this for you because you're such an awesome guy." He also actually made a sculpture of his dog as well called Trump, and one is in the National Portrait Gallery, and the other one is at the VMA.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what do we know about the Oxfordshire election?
Well, essentially, it was quite chaotic. You can see the painting now, right?
The Oxfordshire election, not really the painting. So
Ah, right.
it was notorious. It was an election campaign. So in the 18th century, 1754, and the election campaign between two parties, the Whigs and Tories, which we still hear a lot today, like the Tories.
Yeah.
The Whigs, who already has a majority of seats in the parliament, decided to challenge the seats in Oxfordshire. And seats in the Oxfordshire were mainly dominated by a context of political and social class. And so this fueled a 2-year campaign between the two parties and characterized, well, by unprecedented levels of expenditure, bribery, and corruption. And so this election inspired Hogarth looking into the humors of an election. And Matthew just showed us this first slide. And what do we see here?
Well, I suppose this painting just focuses on the Whigs for now. There was actually quite a lot happening at the time. Like in this window particularly here,
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly during that time, they changed the calendar from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar.
Mm.
So that's what you can kind of see in the window. There's a massive protest. There's other things going on in this.
You mean the protest was triggered by the change of calendar?
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
But there's
So who
other.
changed the calendar?
Sorry.
Who changed the calendar?
I'm not particularly sure. I suppose that's what this election was about. That's why it was still kind of a prevalent problem. I mean, of course, people are used to it now, but it was such a big deal that
Mm.
they had this kind of slogan: "Give us back our 11 days."
Mm.
Changing the calendar meant they lost 11 days of September,
Right.
and it was, like with any sort of change, people just found it very hard to get used to this new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I imagine it was the Tories that might have changed the calendar, but I'll have to double check.
So people were like rioting and demonstrating because of the change of the calendar to the
Exactly.
Tories.
Yes.
And this scene shows the Whigs, right?
Yes.
Because we can see this orange flag. That's the color of the Whigs.
Oh, yes, you're right.
And there's a very disorderly room, perhaps, or like a dining room.
Mm.
So there's music in the background. And yeah, that's right. Like just below the flag, there's this striking young man, I guess. Looks like a gentleman.
Mm.
And we believe that he's one of the candidates.
Mm.
This obese elderly woman sitting on his laps.
Mm.
And then we can see this little girl like removing something off the man's hand, probably stealing a ring or something.
Mm.
What else do we see? Do we know who that person is over there? Like this person right behind the gentleman, just below the
Um.
flag.
I couldn't find out anything about him actually,
Like
but
just like blowing smoke into
yes,
his face, right?
yes. I. It's a drunk person. It's another candidate, but he's having to listen to this drunk person just babble on.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people getting drunk in there and eating a lot too, right?
Yes, yes.
Because when we look at the other side of the table, the right hand side of the painting, there's this man again, and then you can see there are a lot of shells, like oyster shells there.
Mm.
And then he's being treated, right, being bled because he's eating too much oysters. So probably getting like food poisoning from it.
Yes.
And then this right in the middle, this man took off his wig and then being treated by Jin. So there was probably a fight or something, and then this man was being treated.
Mm. Yes. I imagine it's because of just the bricks being thrown into the room.
Right, so he was hit by the brake.
Yeah, most likely. You can actually see another person getting hit by a brick on the right.
Oh, right, so there were like bricks throwing through the window.
Yes.
And that's a very like humorous detail.
Mm-hmm.
And the composition actually resembles the Last Supper.
Yeah.
So, but then this is a more disordered scene whereas the Last Supper is more intimate and calming, although everyone has something in their heads, right? This is more like, again, something, everyone has something, like greed and gluttony here. We can see alcoholic, but cluelessness and uncivilized. So it's a nice parallel to the Last Supper.
Very true.
Shall we look at the second slide? So this is called the an election entertainment.
Mm.
So indeed, it looks like an entertainment.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Oh, that's the etching. It's essentially just the same thing. Um, But apparently, Hogarth, it actually took him many years to actually make etchings of these paintings
Mm-hmm.
because no one actually wanted to help him make those etchings during that time. It was
Mm.
a very controversial topic to make fun of the politicians. So
Right.
it took him a very, very long time to make these. But it's,
It seems like his topics are always very controversial.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, now it's not a big deal, but back then it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, next slide.
So here is more like a calming rural area, and this is called canvassing for votes.
Yes.
And right in the middle, it draws our attention instantly. Three men there, two on either side, as if they're negotiating something or trying to persuade the person in the middle, probably trying to get votes from him.
That's right. Um, so both parties are trying to bribe the innkeeper into
Mm-hmm.
voting for their party, and
Mm.
he's taking both of the bribes. Yeah.
Mm. And like some some paintings, the choice of Hercules, the painting of Hercules where he has to choose between virtue and vice, like the path going to virtue, which will lead to his heroic destiny, whereas vice will be an easygoing temptations. So it's like, although it's hard to define when it comes to politics, which is virtue and which is
That's
vice.
very true. Yeah.
And then on that signboard up there, that's some kind of representations too. So we can
Yes.
see the lower one. This is the figure is emptying this trunk of gold, right? And then he's like sprinkling gold coins to the people there.
Hmm.
And it's a symbol of like indicating that they're like just spending for like unnecessary elections like that or
Hmm.
campaign. And then whereas the upper signboard there, we see the military. So Hogarth believed this is where it should be spent.
Hmm. Oh, that's clever.
And what do we know about that line over there on the left?
Lion.
Yeah.
Yes. So the lion represents Britain because it's kind of a symbol, and we also have him eating a French symbol called a fleur de lis. Did I pronounce it right?
So it's like lily of the flower, flower of lily.
Yes, that's right. So it's just England consuming the French. Um, and we've said in a few other streams that, I mean, it was kind of true at that time period anyway, but Hogarth did particularly didn't like the French. But I suppose this was also just a problem at that time.
And it seems like the lion doesn't have a lot of fangs, and like just like two
Ah,
fangs. So it's
yeah.
like a toothless, weak kind of lion, and like it's just trying to gobble this symbol of the French army,
Mhm.
but unable to maybe. And then on the left hand side is lady there. She's like counting some notes or money, right? And
Mm,
probably just being bribed.
yes. Um, I suspect it's to do with what's happening on the right.
Mm.
Um, so one of the representatives of a particular party
Mm.
is asking this Jewish merchant
Mm-hmm.
to give his items to wives. So the wives can get these items as kind of a trade off so they can tell their husbands to vote for that particular party.
Ah, so bribing the wives.
Yes, because at that time they couldn't really vote, so they would
Mm.
just tell the women to tell the wives to tell their husbands to vote for this particular party.
Right, so they can influence the husbands.
Yes,
Ah,
exactly.
that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
So do we know that this figure peeping from the door on the left, just behind the lady who's like, counting something. I think like he's like a soldier, right? Like
Yeah.
unflinchingly loyal to the British Army, or patriotism. And then on the right-hand side, there's the sailors. So they represent people who are patriotic,
Very true.
loving the country. And there's like riots at the back, right? The background there.
Yes.
You see. Do we know who they are or what they're rioting about?
Yes. During that time, there was a lot of hate towards the Jewish people.
Right.
So there's quite a number of riots just because of the of that. Essentially, it got pretty bad. You can see up here. You can see a guy firing a gun into a crowd.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's actually another guy up here, maybe firing something too.
Yeah. So it's very unsettling times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like people are focusing on other things. It's not really helping the nation. And shall we look at the third scene?
Sure.
Well, here we have the blue sky, and we see the two flags. So the blue represents the Tories, and the orange one represents the Whigs. So there's the polling station.
That's right.
But we see a lot of, we see the ailing, the old, and like ex-soldiers trying to, they're pushing or shoveling like people to go and vote for them, right?
That's right. It's very chaotic. I mean, I'm sure they could have just waited and taken turns, but yeah, it kind of got out of hand.
So it shows how desperate these people are, right? It seems to be like a contrast to Christ healing the sick. Well, there's a lot of paintings about Christ healing the sick, and this is a little bit different. They're both very competitive. They're not really healing the sick. They're simply just trying to get the sick to vote for them.
Yes.
And manipulate them.
Yes.
And again, Hogarth depicts this instead of like squandering resources to a fruitless election. The country needed at the time was to place the resources into supporting the army, because we see that soldiers were crippling and in wheelchairs, and then some lost their limbs. And then in the background, there's this lady in the coach, right? We see that lady in the coach on the left-hand side.
Oh,
and that represents Britannia.
Yes.
And we see that the coach is collapsing.
Yes.
And it was neglected by these two coachmen up there. I'm not sure what they were doing, but they were just being distracted by some games.
That's right. Yeah.
So it is like a depiction of neglecting priorities.
Yes, exactly.
That's what we see here.
Yes. It's you mentioned about the sick. I found it quite interesting that you see this depiction of a person that well, he might have some mental something or other, and they're just trying to push him into voting. And there's no real sign you can tell if he actually knows what's going on. They just need as many people as they can, and
so they're just trying to get the vote and not really care like who or what is going on.
Yes.
Let's scene 4.
All right, just a moment. Okay, this is the last one.
So do we know who this figure is on the chair?
It's a Tory representative.
So they're newly elected
Mm.
members, right? And then we see the first one here very clearly, and then the second one just the shadow on the wall.
On the wall. Oh, on the left.
Yeah, so we see two figures here. So they're being paraded in the streets, right? Newly elected. And well, this is a depiction of George Bob Darlington.
Oh,
And he's
really?
being carried but is on the verge of falling over. So Darlington at the time was a prominent political figure that lost his seat in the 1754 election. So this is a parody of the inability to identify true virtue and talent. And so that is why we see he was being precariously carried around, and it's really like he's gonna tumble over or something.
It's quite clever.
Yeah, and then it's interesting, and we see the mother pig and piglets there, right?
Yes.
Do we know what they represent?
It's based on a story.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of the story. It slips my mind. Do you remember?
The Exorcism of Legion, right? So it's a Jesus Christ story, and it's about Jesus exposed demons from a man and into a herd of swine. And then the herd of swine ran down the lake and drowned themselves. So we can see this mother pig and the piglets, they're running into the river or something, right?
Yeah. And there's one in the water as well.
Yeah. And then you can see the charge into a woman. You can see those two legs. Yeah. So they charge into the woman, and then, well, they're going to eventually drown in the river or swim in the river, whatever it is. It's very clever that Hogarth uses these kind of historical mythology, biblical stories to bring out the humor of the election.
That's right. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, you also have two opposing members just in the center fighting each other.
Right.
Yeah. I suppose that could be the reason why the chair the man on the chair is kind of falling.
Yeah. So I guess again, like that's the blue one in the blue coat and the other one in the orange coat, right?
Yes.
So it represents the Whigs and the Tories fighting.
Let's see.
What do we see here?
Yes. So I kind of assumed there were black people on the top right, but it's actually chimney sweeps. Yes. And one of them is peeing on this animal trainer at the bottom. Yeah. It's odd. And
elegant lady fainted, right?
yes, and she's being held by two of her black British servants.
Yeah. So, what do you think about today's paintings?
Well, it's quite a difficult topic to talk about. I mean, I think you can just appreciate them as art, but there was a lot going on that I was finding out, and it was a very complicated time. So I can understand why Hogarth wanted to make these paintings. Yeah, and there was a lot that we just missed because there was just so much going on. What did you think of it?
Well, I think these four paintings captured the critical issues of elections brilliantly. And time might have changed, but there's not much of a difference in today's politics than what was depicted in these four paintings, right?
Yeah.
Except that corruption and bribery are more sophisticated and discreet in the modern world now.
Exactly.
And so what makes Hogarth such an outstanding artist is his ability to grasp the gist of moral subjects and then transform them into these fascinating images. So yeah, I do enjoy looking at these paintings. They're colorful, they're meticulously painted, and full of parody. And it also shows that how astute that Hogarth is with his knowledge, by referring to biblical scenes and mythology here. So yeah, I think this is a good. Well, that's the end of this episode, and also the end of the Hogarth series. So we hope you have enjoyed it, and if you have any comments or feedback, please leave us a message. We'll have another subject story from next week. And well, after several weeks of historical painting, what do we have next week, Matthew?
We're going to be looking at some pop art, right?
Yeah, Philip Guston, so a 20th century painter.
That's right.
So in the next 4 episodes, join us at the same time next week. And if you like what we do, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel under the same name. So have a good evening or good day ahead, wherever you are, and we look forward to you joining us next week.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.